Hello, my name's Roisin, and let's get critical. Let's get critical. Critical. How wanna get critical. Let's get into physical. Hello friends, welcome back to this video. Please ignore the fringe. The hairdressers have been closed for 3 months now, and whilst I have bought hairdressing scissors, I have not yet had the courage to take them to my own face. So you're gonna have to deal with whatever attempts at taming I have come up with for the time being until I actually, slice my own fringe. I've had nightmares in the past. So today I'm going to do the anti-TBR tag. I have not been tagged in this, I have just seen it floating around and it looked interesting. We know I like to judge. As you can tell from my video on Wednesday, which was when I judged all of the historical fiction I read last year in a tier ranking video, which will be in the cards if you'd like to check that out. So, this is just basically a tag of all the books that I don't want to read, and so I thought that might be quite fun. Let's get into it. The first question is a popular book that everyone seems to love but that you have no interest in. Now, I could obviously say any of the various YA fantasies that do the rounds on BookTube from time to time, because that's not my genre. I don't read that kind of thing, so it would be very easy. I thought what would be more interesting would be to talk about a historical fiction that I'm not interested in, since most of what I talk about on this channel is historical fiction, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hannah. If you've heard me talk about historical fiction before, I think you could probably tell why this is not up my alley, but it is one that everybody who reads historical fiction on BookTube seems to have read and raved about. But I have absolutely no interest in it. It's not fair to say that I'm completely uninterested in World War II fiction, because I read How We Disappeared by Jing Lee, which is set during the Second World War in Singapore, and I loved it. I also read The Shadow King last year by Maza Mengiste, which, whilst not about the Second World War, is about Mussolini's invasion of Ethiopia, and I absolutely loved that book. It was one of my favourite books of the year, which you can check out in the cards above. But World War II fiction set in Western Europe, specifically, I am not interested in, for the most part, unless it is by a writer that I absolutely love or the premise is something that really interests me. If it was, for example, about West African soldiers who were fighting in France for the British Empire, that might interest me. But your standard French girls and Nazis book, I'm not interested in. I find that there has been too much World War II fiction. I have studied too much World War II history that very much makes Britain and America the heroes of all time, and I'm just not really interested in that story. I know that story, the mythos of our current modern Britain, and it's just something that I'm not interested in. I also find that, on top of the fact that the historical fiction market is really saturated with World War II fiction, which means that not all of it can be good, it is also often not very sensitive to the topic, like when I read the Book of Lost Names, which was really not sensitive at all. I find that that can be a problem with a lot of World War II fiction, and this just seems to be that pinnacle of... The Nightingale just seems to be one of those books that's really romanticising the period, and it's something that I'm entirely not interested in. Number 2 is a classic book that you have no interest in reading, and there are a lot of classics that I have no interest in reading, but I think I'm going to say Jack Kerouac's On the Road. I have not read On the Road, but everyone who I know has read it really didn't like it. I didn't like The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which is of course not the same book, but follows a lot of the same tropes. That sort of mid-century misogyny is just something that I don't really feel any need to read, and I don't really care about all these cool dudes doing loads of drugs. It's just not what I'm interested in reading about at all. I think that drug use can be interesting in memoir or in perspective, but the way that it's framed in these the beat genre, I'm really not interested in. The Mersey Beat, though, I did love, which is not novels, it's poetry, but they're kind of based on a similar rhythm, but they're from Liverpool, and I just think they're better. Anyway, a problematic author you have no interest in now, and I could have chosen a lot of different classic authors for this. I know there are modern authors as well. Philip Hensher is an author that I read last year and discovered was transphobic and don't want to read again, but the one that I'm going for here is H.P. Lovecraft. I'm not a huge horror person anyway, but I do love like creepy books with gothic overtones, but the racism of H.P. Lovecraft has really just meant that I have absolutely no interest in reading anything Lovecraftian, despite the number of times that his name is used in relation to horror generally. I suppose it's kind of a cop-out, but there are lots from this time that I'm not really interested in reading. Rudyard Kipling, for example, Joseph Conrad. There's a lot of that colonialist literature that really I have no interest in reading at all. As well as a problematic author you have no interest in reading, there was also an author you have no interest in reading, not because they're problematic, but just because they don't call to you. And for me, that is Sarah J. Maas. I know she's talked about a lot, and I guess this is kind of the cop-out, talking about the YA fantasy series that I have no interest in, but anytime anyone's talked about Sarah J. Maas, I just think it sounds really predictable and tropey, and just doesn't hold any interest to me. It's not my jam, and I don't mind reading some things that are predictable and tropey if they are in my lane, but Sarah J. Maas certainly is not my lane. Number 4 is an author you've read a couple of books from and have decided is not for you, and for me that's David Nicholls. I've read One Day and I've read Us, and I did not like either of them. Tropey, boring, middle-aged bloke kind of writing is how it felt to me. I know a lot of people love One Day and thought it was so innovative and interesting, and I thought it was just really obviously manipulative and trying to tug on your heartstrings in a really, really clear and obvious way that just made it seem really performative. I guess that's not kind of the word for the book. It's not performative, it's heavy-handed, I guess. It was very heavy-handed in what it was trying to do. The characters weren't really of interest to me, they just were both rubbish people, which can be interesting, but it wasn't the perspective that this book was taking. And yeah, most of all, it just seemed like it was a stock book, like put this bit, put this bit, put this bit, and people cry. Great book. For me, it didn't work, and Us was even worse. Question number 6 is a genre you have no interest in or have tried and didn't like. And again, I could say YA fantasy, that sort of thing, because it's just not my lane. I have no interest in trying it, but I do like fantasy, and there are certain elements of fantasy that I'm interested in. I'm sure there are more specific, but because I don't have a huge knowledge of it, I haven't read loads of it, I can't quite figure out what specific parts of the genre are not for me and which parts are. Historical fiction, as I've mentioned, is the thing that I feel like I do have a handle on. I like this, I don't like this. And I'm going to say military-based historical fiction is stuff that I have really no interest in whatsoever. Like, if you're going to set a book during the Roman period, that's great. I could be really interested in that. I have a classics degree, for example. But if it's just all about military manoeuvres and tactics, and it's really, really boring and mechanical, like it's not about people, it's not about beautiful writing, it's not about themes and ideas and philosophies, it's just about they went there and did this, and then they went there and did this, and it was a really clever tactic because of this. I'm just bored. And the same with World War II or World War I. I don't mind books set in the trenches if they're about the people in the trenches, rather than about, and at 8:44 they took this trench and moved 2 feet forwards, but they were stuck there for the next 6 days with continual shelling. Just, it's not for me. Number 7 is a, I don't know if I've got the numbers right for this at all, I'm just going with it, but I think number 7 is a book you've bought and will never read, and my hopeful answer to that is none of them. If I've bought a book, then I intend on reading it, and I will try it. I can DNF it if I want to, but I don't think there are any that I've bought that I'm not going to attempt. Just the fact that it's sitting on my shelves is going to make me attempt it. It may take years, it may sit there for a while, but because I own it, I want to try it. I haven't changed that much in terms of my taste since I was younger. A lot of my taste is still exactly the same, and so I'm still intimidated by the books that I bought that I wanted to know about, like Russian classics or economics and that political history. I'm still interested in those things, but they still intimidate me. I still love the same things and I still dislike the same things. I don't think my taste changes enough that I've bought something and I'm never going to get around to it. And because I don't buy a huge amount of books, there are no books that I've bought just because it was a beautiful edition or because it was the final book in a series that I'm not continuing in, but I wanted to own the whole series. That's just not how I work, especially since I don't read that many series to begin with. Number 8 is a series you have no interest in reading or have DNF'd. And for me, I'm going to go the easy route and I'm going to say Mortal Instruments or anything by Cassandra Clare. It just does not sound like me. It sounds like complete melodrama and tropey nonsense, and whilst tropey nonsense can be fun, for me this just sounds really, really boring and fanfiction-y. I mean, it started as fanfiction, I believe, or Wattpad writing or something, and I just, I know it's judgy, I know it's snobby, but that's just my taste. I'm just not interested. I read stuff that snobby people would look down on, I do, and that's my jam, but this stuff just sounds really boring to me, so I'm not interested in reading any Cassandra Clare. And then the final one is a new release you're not interested in. And I don't know if it's that everyone's been doing their wrap-ups of last year videos, or that I've not been on Instagram as much recently as I have been in the past, but I don't really know what's come out like recently. I've got books that I'm anticipating, but I want to read them, so what's come out and I've seen it and been like meh, I can't think of anything. But I did a little bit of research before this video and I found a book that is coming out in March and that I have no interest in, and that is The Committed by Viet Thanh Nguyen. Now this sounds like it would be something that I'm interested in, historical fiction set in Vietnam, a country I've been to and loved, and one that I want to read more about. But I read The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen, which won the Pulitzer Prize, which people rave about, and I hated the way it dealt with sexual assault, and all of the women in it were just tits and legs. And so I have no interest in reading his next book, because while some people have said he was trying to comment on stuff with that, I'm like, he didn't do a very good job of commenting on it when it was just like everyone was described as really sexually attractive, even his mother. Yeah, it was just gross and really masculine writing, which is not something that I'm interested in reading. It's not that I'm not interested in reading books by men, it's just this specific type of masculine writing where women are cutouts to either be desired or abused. It's just not for me. You can keep that and I won't read it. That is the Anti-TBR tag. I will leave the original in the description as well as all of the questions if you fancy doing this video yourself, or even just answering some of the questions in the comments. I would love to hear what you're really not interested in reading. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like this video if you liked it and to subscribe, because I will be back very soon as I put out videos every Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. Thank you for watching and I will see you again. Bye bye!